Hebrews, Hebrews, Hebrews. This is Prophets of Awakening. It's our men's advanced Bible study, the 21st of August, 2026. Okay. Our main topic is Trump is not building the ballroom. Okay, we're gonna play that video and we're gonna break it down and see what was being uncovered. Okay. You go to our YouTube channel, the Prophets of Awakening. Check out our videos. We have over 1,000 videos that you can look at, examine, close to 2,000. These videos will lead you to the truth of the Holy Scriptures. And if you like what you're hearing and receiving, I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated. And we have our Cash App at the bottom of the screen for those that want to support this channel and help it move along. That too would be greatly appreciated. Okay. For those that don't know, this is a non-Messianic channel. We deal with the Tanakh and the Torah. Tanakh being the Old Testament, so-called Book of Remembrance. It's from Genesis to Malachi. And the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament that was given to Moses by our Savior and our Redeemer and our Deliverer, the Lord of Hosts. Okay, this channel was created to aid and assist our Hebrews who are waking up to their true identity and also understanding who the Savior and the Redeemer truly is. Shalom and welcome to this channel, and welcome to our men's advanced Bible study. Okay, we're gonna do our normal, which is a moment of silence, a prayer, a psalms. We have some current events, need to know information, a little dialogue, and our topic for discussion is Trump is not building the ballroom. Okay, and then we're going to our scripture reading, which is we're going to be dealing with the fact that the Iran connection, the connection that Iran has that no one is talking about. Okay, we'll pick a scripture like we normally do. We'll break that scripture down. Then we'll open it up for, send the link out, open it up for anybody with any questions, any comments, any dialogue, and then we'll close out. Okay. This moment of silence is for the Lord of Hosts and all that He's doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance in these last days. Oh Lord, we thank you for your great mercy and your great power and wisdom. We charity waiting for your powerful deliverance of your people Israel. Oh Lord, you have given us insight into the scriptures of our forefathers, and you, oh Lord, have directed us to who you are and your role in the goings on of heaven and earth. When we come this day, doubtless that you will appear and that you will gather your nation from among these wicked Gentiles. Oh Lord, you spake through your prophet Isaiah, and you said that you would help Abraham's seed, okay, that you scattered. You have completed that promise as of this day. And you said, oh Lord, that you would remove the darkness from around us. Tarry not, oh Lord, the latter days are here, and we are waiting and watching for you. Peace be unto you. Okay? We're going to read the Psalms.
Shalom, everybody. I'm going to be reading Psalms 99, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, the holiness of God. It says, the Lord reigneth, let the people tremble. He sits between the cherubims, let the earth be moved. The Lord is great in Zion, and he is high above all the people. Let them praise thy great and terrible name, for it is holy. The king's strength also loveth judgment. Thou doest establish equity. Thou executest judgment and righteousness in Jacob. Exalt ye the Lord our God and worship at his footstool, for he is holy. Moses and Aaron among his priests, and Samuel among them that call upon his name. They called upon the Lord, and he answered them. He spake unto them in the cloudy pillar, and they kept his testimonies and the ordinance that he gave them. Thou answerest them, O Lord our God. Thou wast a God that forgavest them, though thou tookest vengeance of their inventions. Exalt the Lord our God and worship at his holy hill, for the Lord our God is holy. And shalom. Now Psalms 99, the holiness of God.
Okay. You got anything on that?
Shalom, Brother Leonard. I got a question about verse 5, sir, where it says, "Exalt ye the Lord our God, and worship at his footstool, for he is holy." I remember you teaching about the footstool. Is is uh is the Lord of hosts footstool Zion?
Right, Mount Zion, and yeah, Jerusalem and Mount Zion.
Okay.
He exists on the right hand side of Yahweh, but he comes down to his Mount Zion. Like I said, these angels are the ones that's coming down, and they're the ones that dwell on these mountains. Okay,
Okay.
so-called high places.
Right.
Okay,
Sure.
so with that being said, we're gonna go up to our current events. Okay, I thought this right here was pretty interesting. We're gonna play it and talk about it.
Much of the United States is at risk of having a blackout for 18 months. That means there would be a year and a half where certain parts of the United States would have no electricity. That right there would be devastating. Look at this. It says U.S. power grid at risk of 18-month blackout. One city, as of right now, is currently in the dark and has been for more than 1 week. This is as of today. They've been in the dark for more than a week, and it is expected to last for several more days. I will explain why in a moment. But look at this, okay? Iranian hackers are targeting U.S. energy and water sectors. This is according to federal officials. They have been warning us of this for several months. We learned that there were hackers trying to embed themselves into our infrastructure, which could shut down our water supply, could impact our energy. Everything would be disrupted. Now, why should we be concerned with that? Well, for the number one reason is because we need electricity, we need water, we need these things to survive. If we don't have electricity, especially leading into the winter, and we have a very cold winter, people will freeze to death in their homes. That's why we need to figure this out and ensure that we are not going to be hacked, or we will not see some type of an attack. I'll explain why in a moment, but look at this.
Concerns are heightened as one U.S. city has been without power for more than a week. John Wellinghoff said the grid could be seriously disrupted if similar incidents targeted the 10 most important substations in the country's 3 sections. In Northwest Indiana, more than 75,000 customers were still in the dark Wednesday, and full restoration is not expected until August 25th.
Are you tired of your ugly, cracked concrete? We have the solution for you.
Okay, so you see what could happen. Okay, I want to read this article to you though. Okay, look at this right here. It says right here, John Wellinghoff, he's a former chair of the Federal Energy Regulation Committee, or FERC. Okay, he told the New York Times that America's aging infrastructure is badly outdated and potentially vulnerable to a coordinated attack. He first raised this alarm back in 2013 after a gunman shot 17 transformers at an electrical substation near San Jose, California. Okay. Now, obviously, if there's a coordinated attack and people go and attack these substations, obviously it's going to take some time to fix it. But why he says it's going to take some time is exactly what's happening in Indiana. Okay, look at this right here. It says right here, Wellinghoff said that the FERC did an analysis that determined the U.S. power grid could be seriously disrupted if similar incidents targeted the 10 most important substations in the country's 3 sections, the Western, Eastern, and Texas interconnections. Substations are where multiple high voltage lines meet, routing electricity between power plants, transmission lines, and local neighborhoods. Says, we came up with some very outstanding numbers. If you knock out 9 total substations along those 3 grids, you can black out the entire United States. That's risky. Now, I have received multiple comments and emails from people that said that the threats at these substations are real. and that they're actually increasing the security at the substations. I want to show you something. This is the reason why. It says one of the reasons why the grid is especially vulnerable is its age. According to the New York Times, more than 75% of the distribution transformers, like on street corners and telephone poles, are older than their 50-year life expectancy. Larger power transformers, which have shorter lifespans, were on average 38 to 40 years old in 2014. Remember how I talked about that people are paying more for electricity even though they're using less? The reason why they're paying more is because we have to pay the bill for the new transformers, the new power poles, the new power lines. It is the consumer that pays that. And as a result, we see our bills increase substantially. It's not just the usage, okay? It's everything else. You need to have a generator just in case. You also need to make sure you have enough heaters that do not just run on electricity. Maybe they run on gas, okay, propane. You need to make sure you have the two. And I said this before, I said this last year. Make sure you have a heater that runs on gas. Make sure you have one that runs on electricity. And if you have one that you can run with like solar or something like that, okay, great. A lot of people don't. If you do, that's great.
Okay, what you got on there? What you think?
Shalom, Berlin. I have been seeing out there in Gary, and like you said on the clip that they on social media, I've been seeing that some people I follow on social media had just been showing their times, them being out of power for this week, and they also are saying that it's some surrounding cities around Gary as well.
Wait.
That's without power.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then it made me think Gary is like mostly black though. Me thinking about that though, Brother Leonard.
Right. It seemed like a trial run too.
Yes, sir.
Is that something?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Check this out.
Shalom, Brother Leonard. I'm sorry. Indiana, sir, you know, they was doing a lot of protesting out there too. So that I feel like that's interesting. They had these blackouts. It's like it's all a test. They doing it all out there first.
Okay.
The first number is 163.87. That is the number of Japanese yen it costs to buy a single United States dollar on July 29th, 2026. The weakest the yen has been in nearly 40 years. The second number is $39.83 trillion. That is the size of the United States national debt as of last week, growing at a rate of $7.91 billion per day, $91,549 per second, and on track to cross $40 trillion by the end of this month. Now hold those two numbers in your mind, because every major financial outlet is telling you the same story right now. They are telling you that the United States government just spent billions of dollars to rescue the Japanese yen, that Washington is helping Tokyo out of friendship. President Trump himself said it. He said, and I am paraphrasing now, that the United States has a good relationship with Japan and they wanted a little bit of help. That reading is not just shallow, it is dangerously wrong, because what happened on July 31st, 2026 was not a rescue of Japan. It was a rescue of America's ability to borrow money. And if you do not understand the mechanism, you will not see the crisis that is building underneath it. Here is my thesis, and I'm going to be very direct with you today. I'm going to show you exactly three things. First, that the United States did not buy the yen to save Japan. It bought the yen to prevent Japan from selling over $1 trillion in American government bonds. Second, that the man executing this strategy, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, is deploying the exact same psychological warfare techniques he used as a hedge fund trader to break currencies, except now he is running them in reverse from inside the government. And third, that this intervention reveals a structural trap I am calling the reverse Soros, a dynamic in which the world's most powerful debtor nation must now use market psychology to defend its own creditor's currency in order to keep borrowing from that creditor at affordable rates. On this channel, we do not do panic and we do not do cheerleading. We follow the logic of power. We follow the incentives. And when you strip away the emotion in the headlines, The picture always becomes clear. Let me start with the facts, because you need the ground beneath your feet before I take you into the analysis. On July 30th, Japan's Ministry of Finance instructed the Bank of Japan to begin purchasing yen in the foreign exchange market. The Bank of Japan data suggests Tokyo may have sold as much as $58.97 billion buying yen in that single New York session alone. Then on July 31st, something unprecedented happened. The United States joined in. A Reuters photographer captured a note on Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's legal pad during a cabinet meeting at Camp David. The note read, and this is the exact text, to do, buy Japanese yen, JPY, $5 to $10 billion. The photo was published globally. Every trader on earth saw it within hours. The combined operation over those 2 days is estimated at approximately $87 billion, roughly 11 trillion yen. The yen surged from its near 4-decade low of 163.87 to 156.34 by August 3rd. A 5% move in the world's third most traded currency in under a week. Now, here's what almost nobody is telling you. The United States Treasury did not sell dollars to buy yen. It sold euros. The New York Federal Reserve, acting on behalf of the Treasury, executed the purchase through Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, selling euros for yen. On paper, the United States never sold a single dollar. Think about what that means. But that explanation is too simple. To understand why the Treasury Secretary of the United States is writing to-do lists about buying a foreign currency, you first have to understand a concept I am calling the reverse Soros. Let me define it with a simple analogy first, and then I will take you deeper. Imagine you owe your landlord $1 trillion. Your landlord is patient. He has been collecting rent for 40 years and lending the money right back to you so you can keep paying. It is a beautiful arrangement as long as the landlord can afford to keep lending. But now your landlord is in trouble. His own expenses are exploding. Energy costs are up. Import prices are destroying his household. And he is starting to think about cashing in some of those IOUs you gave him, not because he wants to, but because he needs the money to survive. If he starts cashing them in, your borrowing costs go through the roof. So what do? You help him with his immediate problem, his collapsing purchasing power, so that he never has to cash those IOUs. That is not generosity. That is self-preservation disguised as friendship. That is the reverse Soros. Now, why do I call it that? Because the man executing this strategy literally invented the playbook for breaking currencies. And now he is running it backward. Scott Bessent joined Soros Fund Management in 1991 and eventually ran the London office. In September 1992, he was a leading member of the team that identified the structural weakness in the British pound. Britain had committed to keeping the pound pegged to the German Deutsche Mark through the European exchange rate mechanism. But Britain's economy was weak, and almost every British homeowner had a floating rate mortgage, meaning their monthly payments were tied directly to the Bank of England's interest rate. The only weapon the Bank of England had to defend the pound was to raise rates. But raising rates would have bankrupted British homeowners and collapsed the economy. Bessent and Soros saw this. They bet $10 billion against the pound. Britain raised rates from 10% to 12%, announced 15%, and the market called the bluff. By that same evening, Britain surrendered. The pound crashed. Soros made over $1 billion in a single day. They called it Black Wednesday, the day a hedge fund beat a central bank. Now let that sit for a second, because the same man who understood that sometimes you can move a currency not with money but with credibility, not with how much you spend, but with what you signal, is now the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. And he just left a note in front of Reuters photographers that said, buy Japanese yen with the ticker symbol written out as though he does not know it, with a dollar amount that is far too small to technically move a dollar, 7.5 trillion a day currency market. Does that sound like an accident? Or does that sound like a man who has spent 30 years understanding that markets are moved by psychology as much as by capital? This is where the evidence escalation begins. And I want you to pay close attention because the layers here are deeper than what any headline has given you. Layer 1. Japan is America's single largest foreign creditor. As of March 2026, Japan held $1.19 trillion in United States Treasury securities, approximately 13% of all foreign-held American government debt. But here is what is critical. Japan sold $29.6 billion in treasuries in the first quarter of 2026 alone, the largest reduction since 2022. Japan's holdings dropped from a high of $1.24 trillion in February to $1.19 trillion by March. The direction is unmistakable. America's biggest lender is pulling money out. Now, why is Japan selling? Because the yen has been collapsing and Japan needs dollars to defend its own currency. The traditional way a country defends its currency is to sell its foreign reserves, which in Japan's case means selling American Treasury bonds, converting those into dollars, and then using those dollars to buy yen. Every time Japan does this, it floods the market with additional treasury supply, pushing American bond prices down and yields up. The 30-year treasury yield hit 5.27% in late July, the highest since June 2007. The 10-year rose above 4.7%. Every basis point higher on those yields makes the $39.83 trillion in national debt more expensive.
Okay. So what he's telling us is that America is secretly buying the yen. When you understand what's going on, the Chinese are the ones behind the scenes trying to bankrupt America. So why would you buy the yen? So evidently, they know something that we don't know. They know that the collapse of the dollar is so close to now. They backdooring buying large amounts of Chinese currency. What you think?
In Shalom too, Brother Leonard, the euro kind of go hand in hand with the dollar, right? Or no?
Yeah, but the only reason they're dealing with it is that they're using the euro in order to purchase yen.
Okay, right. Yeah, yes, sir. That's
You know
why.
what I'm saying?
That's why I was asking.
Right, and the purpose of that is to get the yen so they can give it to Japan, because they got to keep Japan afloat. Japan need yen.
And Brother Leonard, on the testaments, the U.S. or whatever they called on the testaments, they had a relationship with Japan. They was doing business with them.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's big or not, but I just thought that.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. It's connection. Pretty much everything, every movie, everything you see on the news is subliminally sending messages to us about what's actually going on in real time.
Okay. Right.
Right. So that wouldn't be a coincidence. Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, let me see where I'm at. Yeah. This might need to know information. Okay.
After marrying a German wife, I found out people in
Okay. Here we go.
Suddenly becomes something the government needs. Right now, the US government is quietly activating extraordinary powers over materials it calls critical to national.
So they in critical mode, but ain't saying nothing. We see how we just saw the video, they buying the yen. Check this out.
Security. And if you own gold or silver because you want assets outside of the system, then you need to hear this. Because the thing about critical national security is that once something gets that label, the rules around who can buy it, who can sell it, and who can keep it can change fast. And we know this because it's already happened with gold. Picture this. It's 1933 in the United States. Now, you've done everything right. You see that the banks are failing all around you, and you don't trust the dollar. So you do exactly what you're legally allowed to do. You take your cash and exchange it for physical gold. Except the government has a problem. They want to print more, and they can't create more currency because it's tied to gold they don't have. So now the government wants the exact thing that you're sitting on. They want your gold. So President Roosevelt, he signs Executive Order 6102. And just like that, American citizens were forced to turn over their gold bullion, rare and unusual coins were exempt, in exchange for dollars. And this was not a request, it was an order under the threat of fines or jail time. But once that gold was in the government's hands, what did they do? They revalued it. They raised the price, devaluing the dollars that you now held against it. But it wasn't just gold. They came for silver too. Make no mistake, the next year in 1934, Executive Order 6814, they required silver holders to turn over their silver. Now, foreign and domestic coins were exempt, but if you had silver of a certain purity, to the US Mint, it went. And they didn't make it illegal the way that they did with gold, but still, at the end of the day, what it showed us is a pattern. When economic pressure mounts and governments need something, they will pull whatever lever they have available to them to make sure they get it. And to be clear, I'm not saying that they're confiscating gold and silver today, but I am saying that what happened in 1933 could easily happen again. And it's especially eerie when you start to see signals that make you pause. So what exactly are those signals that are happening today? What does it tell us about what's coming next? And what does it mean for you? In case you missed it, on July 20th, President Trump signed an executive order to secure America's supply of critical minerals. And on the surface, that makes sense. The US relies heavily on other countries for the raw materials that are required for much of our military equipment, weapons, even the technology that you're using right now to watch this video. And if something were to disrupt these supply chains, say geopolitically or war or otherwise, well, US, we're stuck. So it makes sense that the government's saying, hey, we want to know where exactly these raw materials are coming from so we can also identify any vulnerabilities. Sounds great. But then just 10 days later, a second order comes out, which is what made me pause. This time, the government made a formal determination under the Defense Protection Act, a law that essentially lets the government take priority over materials when they decide that national defense needs them more than you do. And this is where my antenna started to go up, because inside this order, it clearly acknowledges that there might not be enough materials to go around, not enough for the government and for civilians. And should that be the case, it's very clear in the law who would win that battle. And this isn't just some theory or groundwork that's being laid, it's already being put into practice. Just last week, certain scrap metal and battery waste black mass was blocked from leaving the country for at least a year. These are materials that used to run through private markets that no longer now can be exported. So if we walk through the timeline, we've gone from wanting to know where these materials are coming from to there might not be enough, to national security gets priority, to actually limiting private markets, all in the matter of just a few weeks. And listen, I know scrap material and battery waste doesn't impact you directly, but it's not about the materials themselves that are being blocked today. It's about the precedent and the pattern recognition of what this could mean for you personally. Look at World War II. When America's industry was booming, Americans wanted cars, but cars required rubber for the tires. And from the war, we weren't getting any rubber exports. So what happened? Well, the nationalization of rubber, meaning that all rubber had to go to national defense. Not only that, there were plenty of other items, companies, mills, different types of businesses that were nationalized and made so because the government decreed it to be the case. And with you, if you have not heard already, I am pumped to share that I will be doing another live webinar. If you have attended one before, you know how great they are because, again, they're 100% live. And this one, I think you're really going to like.
So what you think about them confiscating, the risk of them confiscating the gold and silver? They did it before. What you think?
Right, yes, sir. They did it before, and they got everything in place to do it again.
Right, and then we've been listening and over and over again. We keep hearing how they got shards on weapons, right, and bombs,
Mm-hmm.
and those bombs need a whole lot of silver, right?
Mm.
So like she said, who you think gonna get it? The government gonna get it. They're gonna come. Then whatever they can't get, they're gonna confiscate it.
Right.
It's a repeat. So between them buying in these are signs. This place is like I said, it's teetering. And nobody really paying attention to it. They putting a smoke screen over it, you know.
Right.
But they really behind the scenes, they in panic mode. Okay.
Sure.
Is there something?
It is.
All right. So check this out. I thought this was pretty interesting. We got 2 videos on it, but we're gonna go with it. Check it out.
Israel and the war in Gaza. And it was during that
Something
it's obvious. I made a video about this a few weeks ago, giving my thesis of what I think is actually being built, and that video got taken down on my TikTok after about 8 million views, so I re-uploaded it here. And if you haven't seen that one yet, I recommend going over and watching that because it gives you a good basis for where we're starting out from. But I wanted to follow up on my theory, okay? Because in the original video, while I had some solid architectural analysis from Andrew Kerr, it was mostly based off of like a gut instinct, you know, in my own pattern recognition. And since then, I have been digging deep, scouring the web across databases and looking for records, and I have come back with actual receipts, like some actual verifiable public record receipts. And now my theory is stronger than ever. Okay, because I know that Trump is not building a ballroom. He's building an underground data center, and I have the receipts now to prove it. But really quick, if you want to read all of the sources and the documentation for yourself from this video, then they're all going to be linked at the bottom of my Substack, the Dre Dossier, and that's going to be in the description below. And your support means the world to me, so please like this video and subscribe to my channel because TikTok is slowly going to the bad place, and I'm trying to build my presence here on YouTube so that I can keep doing this kind of work with you guys. So sincerely, thank you all so much. And with that, let's get into it. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, where did you even come up with this idea, right? And to that, I would say, well, where does one come up with any evil genius idea? Larry Ellison, of course, my nemesis. You see, a few months back, I was doing a deep dive on Larry Ellison and his relationship with Israel and the war in Gaza. And it was during that research I came across something about Oracle building these underground data centers in Jerusalem in 2021. See, they were 9 stories deep under solid bedrock, about 160 feet underground, and designed to survive missile strikes. I mean, they were completely invisible from satellites. See, Israel needed data sovereignty, a place where their most sensitive military data could live that was physically unhackable and under complete government control. And when you're running these classified military operations, intelligence gathering, or government AI systems, you can't just have that data sitting in some commercial cloud that might be in another country or vulnerable to attack. And after learning all of that, I remember thinking to myself, all right, well, we're going to just go ahead and put a pin in this for now, right? Like, this is all really fascinating, but I don't know what to do with any of this information, but I'm sure that it'll come in handy later. And later in handy did it come, because fast forward a few months and I'm reading about Trump's new ballroom announcement, and that pattern recognition side of my brain starts tingling. Why, you ask? Well, let me just read the specs out loud to you, okay? Because Oracle's underground facilities in Jerusalem were 90,000 square feet and cost around $319 million. Trump's ballroom is about 90,000 square feet and $300 million and climbing. Curious. And then on January 21st, 2025, you have Trump's first full day in office, and Larry Ellison is standing next to him and Sam Altman, and they're giving this White House announcement about Project Stargate. Now, I'm not kidding when I say I could write an entire dissertation on January 21st, because they gave us so much information in that announcement that I feel like, quite frankly, many of us just glazed over. And I've broken it down ad nauseum in other videos and over on my Substack, but the short version is this. Project Stargate is this $500 billion AI infrastructure initiative for government operations, defense intelligence, and consolidating federal data across agencies. Because all of these AI initiatives Trump and his team keep launching need infrastructure. They need servers, power, cooling, and security. And then you look over to who's donating to Trump's ballroom project, right? And the coincidences just keep stacking up on one another. And so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, if this is actually what's happening, right? If this is actually what's being built, then there's got to be some evidence somewhere. Like, you can't just build an underground data center without leaving any paper trail. And so I start digging, right? Because the first thing I want to know is who's actually building this thing. So their lead contractor is Clark Construction. And I went to their website to see what kind of projects they normally work on. And under their critical facilities division, here's what they publicly list. So you've got National Geospatial Intelligence Agency campus, the CISA cybersecurity headquarters, UCENTCOM headquarters at MacDill Air Force Base. I'm reading all of this thinking, okay, so these guys build some serious government facilities. Like, these are no joke. But then I'm thinking, okay, well, if they're this comfortable touting these publicly listed, high security projects, then what aren't they listing? So I keep digging a little further, right? I'm going through these different government contract registries, procurement records, that kind of thing. And then bingo, I found some redacted contracts for Clark Construction, some top secret contracts, it looks like. And you'll never guess who they're for. Well, I mean, we can't guess because they're redacted, but I mean the type of job they're for. Guess what kind of job they're for. If you guessed data centers, you'd be correct. And it's not even like 1 or 2 of these kinds of contracts I found, right? Not even 3. I found 6. 6 redacted contracts for data centers that they built around the US. And again, I'll link all of these contracts in my Substack if you want to go check them out, but they're just listed as literally confidential client data centers 1 through 6. And the client names are obviously classified because the facilities themselves, I'm sure, are classified. I mean, Clark's own description of their work says that they focus on security and survivability, reliability and redundancy, and complex critical facilities. So the company whose specialty is building classified data centers for clients that they can't even name is building the ballroom. Okay, sure, Jan, sure. And here's where it gets even more interesting, because Clark Construction holds a NAVFAC contract, Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command, with a $950 million ceiling. And the way these contracts work is admittedly very clever. So the total value of these contracts is public, but the individual task orders, like the actual work that's being done, that can be considered classified, which means they can hide the true value, cost, and scope of projects by funneling them through these pre-existing military construction contracts. So not only do they specialize in classified data centers, but they have a mechanism to hide what they're actually building. And then on December 4th, something pretty wild happened. Trump fired his ballroom architect. His name was James McCreary, and he was this classical architect who designs these beautiful churches and historic buildings, designing buildings like the Cathedral of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Supreme Court gift shop. I mean, say what you will about the guy, but he's got range. But alas, Trump replaced him with a different architect, a guy by the name of Shalom Baranes. When I say I went to look this man up and my jaw dropped to the floor, so a little background on him. After 9/11, when the Pentagon needed to be rebuilt and hardened against future attacks, they hired Shalom Baranes. Yeah, this man designed the post-9/11 hardening project for the Pentagon, the secure wedges, the skiffs, the bomb-resistant architecture. This was all Shalom. And skiffs, by the way, are sensitive compartment information facilities. They have electromagnetically shielded rooms for classified intelligence work and are built to survive missile attacks. And it's important you know what skiffs are, because this comes back into play a little later on. And his portfolio doesn't stop there. It gets a lot more intense, with DHS headquarters, Treasury building modernization, the GSA headquarters secure facility, the CISA cybersecurity headquarters that, yes, Clark Construction also built. Yeah, so these guys have rendezvoused together before. And at this point, I wanted to see if I could take a peek at what was happening on the ground. So with my last remaining week of my free Planet Labs subscription, I looked through some satellite imagery, and what I saw astounded me. And I saw that these flatbed trucks had been photographed delivering these massive steel caissons to the site. Now, from what I understand about caissons is that they are these huge cylindrical retaining structures, basically. You use them for deep underground construction. They're designed very specifically to hold back soil and water pressure whenever you're going way deep underground. So you wouldn't use them for just standard foundation. And then I saw this heavy lift crane that was like permanently anchored into a concrete pad. And that seemed to be for some long duration construction involving heavy structural materials and lifts from a deep excavation pit. And all of this brought me to my next question, which is, if this is actually going to be a data center, then that means they're going to need a massive amount of power, because data centers consume insane amounts of electricity. So I started looking into what's been happening with DC's power infrastructure. And here is where it gets interesting. In August and September of 2025, just weeks after Trump's announced the ballroom in July, PEPCO filed emergency requests for infrastructure work near the East Wing. And this called for an emergency relocation of water infrastructure, large-scale waterline modifications, and something called Champlain Substation Modernization, which I still haven't quite figured out what that means. But PEPCO's own language in the emergency filing says that there's a lack of alternative supply capacity in downtown DC. And now here's the thing about that. Downtown DC office occupancy has been declining since COVID. I mean, half the buildings are empty. In general, the commercial real estate market is shrinking, not growing. So where's this new massive power demand coming from? And speaking of infrastructure, DC Water increased their capital spending by $300 million, including a specific study of the Federal Triangle area. I found a post by the Washington Aqueduct, which is run by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they were warning that data centers are planning to use Potomac River water for cooling. So at this point, I've got the contractor who builds classified data centers, the architect who designs Pentagon bunkers, physical evidence of deep underground construction, and massive power upgrades along with massive water upgrades. And so the next question I have is, who the hell is funding all of this? Trump says it's being privately funded, and the White House put out a rough list of donors, although most of the amounts from those donors is unknown. So, I mean, really, they could be donating anything from checks to cash to Bitcoin to their own product, maybe. And when I was looking for more information about these donors, I saw that the Carrier Corporation was bragging about how they're donating an HVAC system to the White House ballroom. And so this is interesting because I looked into Carrier and I saw that they have a lot of different products. They have residential AC units, commercial systems, and all kinds of stuff listed on their website. But they also have something called Carrier Quantum Leap, which is specifically their data center solutions. Comprehensive energy efficient solutions for data center thermal management is what their website says. Now, if Carrier is donating an HVAC system and they're on a list with Microsoft, Amazon, Palantir, and all of these heavy hitters, then are they really donating a less than $100,000 ballroom AC system? Or are they perhaps donating the more expensive thing from their new line of solutions, the data center thermal management system? Because wouldn't that be a brag to say it's our thermal management systems that are cooling the White House data center? But that did get me thinking, like, if at least one company is donating a product on top of money, then I'm sure there are others, right? I mean, who knows how many? So I decided to go through the donor list again, and this time with a different mindset, not looking for dollar amounts, but looking at what each of these companies do. And that's when I see one name jump out to me on this ballroom donors list, and that's Paolo Tiramani. And many of you may not be familiar with his name, but I'm sure you know his company, Boxable. Boxable is a Las Vegas company that makes these foldable prefab buildings, and they're about 375 square feet, and they come with electrical and plumbing already built in. Their whole pitch has been basically disaster relief and affordable modular homes. But if you start looking into what Boxable has actually been building for the government, well, it's not just disaster relief housing. That's right, I found contracts showing that they sent over 150 units to Guantanamo Bay in 2021 and 2022. That's right, they've been working on Class 5 military installations, and their SEC filings mention government exemptions from normal state regulations, which means they have clearance to work in classified DoD sites, evidently. And that's when I saw that their units come pre-installed with Faraday caging. That's right, electromagnetic shielding, the kind of thing you would need for skiffs. Remember skiffs? I told you to remember skiffs, because think back to Oracle's underground facilities in Jerusalem. I mean, their own documentation shows that they use modular construction techniques for their own rapid deployment of internal infrastructure, prefabricated rooms that could be assembled quickly underground. And I'm seeing names like Caterpillar on this list, where I'm sure that they've donated equipment like heavy machinery, excavators, and Caterpillar also makes industrial generators, the Catch 3516B models that provide over 100 megawatts of backup power. Thick skull. That's what data sovereignty looks like. That's continuity of government. And that's what AI warfare infrastructure actually looks like. And then I'm looking at Project Stargate, announced on January 21st, 2025, Trump's first full day in office. And Larry Ellison is going on and on about this $500 billion AI infrastructure that's going to save the government and cure cancer. But all of these grandiose ideas surrounding AI, all of that needs a home. And that's why I think it has to be at the White House specifically, because when infrastructure is a part of the executive office of the president, then it has to be classified, protected, exempt from oversight, and the president has to have direct access to it. Unless.
So what you think, Bob? You say the ballroom is not a ballroom. Isn't that something?
Right. That's
It's
like movie.
Huh?
That's like off the movies.
Oh yeah, it's crazy because I'm like this make all the sense in the world, man. Because it never did add up to me. You know, I know you're a nut bucket, but a ballroom. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back and look at all the information, everything that's going on, everything that's happening. Even this guy Larry Ellison, he's a Zionist, Palantir, and then the biggest thing about these Edomites building data centers all over Israel, and they building one in America, in the White House, and they supposed to be linking. They trying to pass a bill to link the Israeli military with their military. And there it is, man.
Right.
This what when they get this online, like I said, they got this thing playing where they gonna think where they got everybody making it look like Israel's in a pickle. Then all of a sudden, Israel gonna get delivered. Make it look like it's coming from heaven. We keep an eye on that, but that to me that was a lot of information that a lot of missing links that I've been looking for. You good on that?
And yes, Shalom, Brother Leonard, and she mentioned Project Stargate. Is that what they're calling it?
That's Elon Musk.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's Elon Musk. All this is all making sense. He was all a part of. So this whole thing from the beginning it's all about them bringing in Pat Judaica.
Right.
Come on, that's what we're looking at. Oh yeah, it's crazy, man. So yeah. So with that being said, I played this last night, but I want to play it again over here in the men's line. Check it out.
World. And so far in 2026,
so understanding what we just dealt with and the connections, then now we got this big old all this chaos going on with the Iran war. But check this out.
Kidnapped Venezuelan President Maduro and seized their oil rigs. Lindsey Graham showed up on Fox News wearing a Make Iran Great Again hat. And at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Trump declared that the U.S. must acquire Greenland immediately.
I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland.
And if you're watching the news right now, it feels like the world is on fire. Random chaos, unconnected crises, too much to keep up with. But what if I told you it's not random at all? What if I told you that once you start connecting the dots, all of these things are connected? And that connection is Israel. Now, I know this might sound a little crazy. You might be thinking, Olivia, no. This is just about stopping terrorism, seizing resources, and saving people from dictators. You know, the same story we've heard 1,000 times. But what if I told you that once you dig deeper, when you look at the alliances, the timing, who benefits, you start to realize that this isn't just about American interests. Venezuela was one of Israel's loudest critics. Iran is Israel's biggest regional threat. Argentina aligned with Israel, and now Patagonia is burning. Every single one of these crises benefits Israeli power.
So another thing that stuck out to me too, Argentina. Remember how Argentina was one of those 3 people that said that the transatlantic slave trade wasn't the greatest humanity crisis, right? Well, at the same time, this nut bucket from Argentina is on this board of peace. Let that firm made.
And I do not believe in coincidences. So I'm going to show you exactly how Venezuela, Iran, and Argentina are all part of the same strategy. And by the end, you're going to see that pattern so clearly, you won't be able to unsee it. But we need to establish something first, because right about now, you might be asking, does Israel really have this much influence over American foreign policy? Yeah. So let me paint you a picture. Israel is a country the size of New Jersey. It has a population of about 9 million people. It's only existed since 1948, and yet the United States has given Israel over $300 billion in aid since 1948. That's more than any other country in history. In 2024 alone, we gave Israel $17.9 billion in military aid, and that's on top of the $3.8 billion we give them every year as part of a standing agreement. And where does that money go? Well, under the 2016 to 2028 memorandum of—
So just for GP, this is the capstone on the dollar bill.
Understanding, Israel gets about $3.3 billion in foreign military financing grants, plus an additional $500 million for joint missile defense programs. And Israel is required to spend the vast majority of that money on American weapons, services, and equipment. You know, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop Grumman. So that $3.8 billion in annual military aid, well, it's essentially a subsidy to the military-industrial complex, funneled through Israel. But get this, Israel also has universal health care, heavily subsidized university education, and extensive social programs. Meanwhile, Americans are drowning in medical debt and student loans. We're funding another country's social safety net and their missile defense systems, while we don't even have healthcare or affordable education ourselves. So when we talk about supporting Israel, we're also talking about supporting defense contractors who profit billions from war, and subsidizing a foreign country's healthcare and education while our own people suffer.
If your blood pressure is high, stop taking blood pressure medicine because they treat the—
Okay. Let's get it.
Who addresses the US Congress, he gets more standing ovations than the President of the United States. And in 2024, he got 58. AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, spent over $100 million in the 2024 election cycle alone. They bragged about having a 98% success rate in the candidates that they support. Christian pastors preach about the US-Israel alliance from the pulpit, calling it a biblical mandate. Millions of evangelical Christians believe supporting Israel is a prerequisite for the second coming of Christ. And any politician who questions our relationship with Israel, even mildly, gets labeled anti-Semitic and primaried out of office. And these are all documented facts. And if you're just not realizing how deep this goes, hit subscribe because we're about to go even deeper. So when you see this level of influence, when a country the size of New Jersey with 9 million people receive...
So she keeps saying how small Israel is. Okay, but let's look at this right quick. So remember, Great Britain ruled the world. Great Britain is a little bitty island. Well, who the one signed the paperwork to get Israel to become a nation again? The Balfour Agreement, Britain. So they got a template. It may be a little bit small as island, but Britain did the same thing. They already got a blueprint.
There's more US aid than any other nation in history. When they have this much control over American foreign policy, you have to ask, what are we getting out of this relationship? And more importantly, who really benefits when American foreign policy aligns with Israeli interests? Because when you look at Venezuela, Iran, and Argentina through this lens, when you ask who benefits from regime change in these countries, the answer becomes very clear. So let's start with Venezuela. On January 3rd, 2026, the Trump administration conducted what they're calling Operation Absolute Resolve, a joint military extraction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And here's what happened. Special Operations Forces raided a heavily fortified compound in the heart of Caracas. They extracted Maduro and his wife, took them into custody, and brought them to the US to face federal charges for narco-terrorism and drug trafficking. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called it America First in Action, which seemed a little abstract to me, but I'm not gonna lie, the execution was impressive. Over 150 military aircraft from across the Western Hemisphere launching in coordination, 0 US casualties, Maduro in handcuffs on the USS Iwo Jima within hours. Which, in contrast, the 1989-1990 US invasion of Panama, Operation Just Cause, to capture Manuel Noriega on similar drug charges, involved a full-scale deployment of 24,000 troops, lasted weeks, caused hundreds of civilian deaths, and led to a temporary US occupation, making Maduro's raid far more surgical and less escalatory. Then Trump posted a video of the operation with helicopters, explosions,
King Albert plane. Remember that.
unfortunate son playing in the background. Maduro had 4 different outfit changes in 48 hours. People were posting where to cop Maduro's look. Conspiracy theories started flying that this had to be a CIA op, because how does a man have that many fits during a military extraction? Make of that what you will. But once you shake off the propaganda, once you look past the action movie presentation, there are some things worth paying attention to. Yes, there were no US casualties. Yes, it went smoothly. But I checked out some Venezuelan reports and they're saying something interesting. They're citing how strange it was that Venezuela's Russian and Chinese defense systems completely failed. Not malfunctioned, failed. Some are suspecting that either Maduro was in on it, or the US is using technology far more powerful than we could imagine. Maduro's son made this statement. We were left blind. They attacked us with an aircraft that emits an electromagnetic wave that affects all defense systems. The technology they used was impressive. I believe this was a rehearsal for something bigger, and humanity should know about it. Kind of ominous, right? And definitely something for all of us to keep in mind. But setting that aside for now, you have to ask, why Maduro, why now, and who actually benefits? So the official story, the administration said that this was about narco-terrorism, right? About stopping drug trafficking, about bringing a criminal to justice. They pointed to a 2020 federal indictment. They talked about protecting Americans from the drug trade, but they also said Maduro had become increasingly politically hostile toward the United States. And what does that mean? Well, Maduro formed alliances with Cuba, Russia, Iran, and China. He expelled U.S. diplomats multiple times. He denounced U.S. sanctions as attempts to topple his government. In 2014, he literally said, "I don't take orders from anyone in the world." And in July 2024, he lost the election, but refused to cede power, declared himself the winner, and was sworn in for a third term on January 10th, 2025. So Maduro, he wasn't really playing ball, right? But here's where it gets more complicated. Now, Trump has actually been pretty open about the oil. At a 2023 press conference, he said Venezuela was about to collapse, we would have taken it over and kept all that oil. And after the extraction in 2026, Trump announced the US would oversee Venezuela until a transition could happen. Within days, the US had already brokered its first sale of Venezuelan oil, a 50 million barrel deal. So Trump is saying the quiet part out loud, right? He's not even hiding that this is about oil. Because Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Larger than Saudi Arabia, larger than Russia, larger than Iran. And yes, controlling that oil benefits the United States, even if it will require a lot of US investment to rebuild the industry. But there's another reason Maduro had to go, one they're not mentioning at all. Hugo Chavez, Maduro's predecessor, cut ties with Israel in 2009 after Israel's military operations in Gaza. He called Israel a genocidal state. Maduro maintained that stance. Venezuela became one of the most vocal anti-Zionist governments in the world. They supported Palestine, they condemned Israeli aggression, they refused to normalize relations with Israel, and that made them a problem. Not just for the US, for Israel. Because here's the thing about regime change. It's not just about narco-terrorism. It's not just about oil. It's about removing opposition to Israeli interests. The United States has been trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government for decades. In 2002, they backed a coup against Chavez. It failed. In 2019, it was Trump who recognized Juan Guaido as the legitimate president, even though he lost the election. That failed also. And now, in 2026, Trump's administration has just taken Maduro by force. And who was one of the first world leaders to publicly support the operation? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, of course. At a cabinet meeting in Jerusalem, he said, "In Latin America, in general, we are now seeing a turnaround, and quite a few countries are returning to the American axis. And, not surprisingly, also to ties with the state of Israel. We welcome this." Read that again. Returning to the American axis and to ties with the state of Israel. Because removing Maduro means removing one of Israel's loudest critics in Latin America. It means installing a government that will normalize relations with Israel. It means securing access to Venezuelan oil for US and Israeli aligned interests. And it means silencing a voice that was calling out Israeli actions in Gaza and the West Bank. Venezuela was a problem for Israel. And now, that problem is gone. So what happens now? Well, if history is any guide, Venezuela will get a new leader. Someone the US approves of, someone who will open up the oil industry to foreign investment, someone who will restore ties with Israel. And the Venezuelan people, they're going to be told that this is about freedom and democracy. But the oil rigs are already being seized, and the pattern is already playing out. And if you think Venezuela is the only target right now, you're not paying attention, because at the exact same time, there's Iran. Recently, Senator Lindsey Graham appeared on Fox News wearing a hat, not a MAGA hat, not a South Carolina hat, a Make Iran Great Again hat.
I pray and hope that 2026 will be the year that we make Iran great again.
Let that sink in. The same politicians who spent the last year calling for war with Iran.
Well, the men and women who serve, they're the ones going, not people answering a poll. And if you ask them, would you be willing to risk your life to stop the Ayatollah from having a nuclear weapon? All of them would say yes.
Are now rebranding. They're not warmongers anymore. No. They're humanitarians. They want to save the Iranian people from the Ayatollah.
President Trump, thank you for picking the people.
over the Ayatollah. You're the first one to do that.
And protests have broke out in Iran. They started on December 28th, 2025 in Tehran's bazaar. Shopkeepers were protesting the economy because inflation was at 50%, but the protests quickly spread. By early January, they were happening in all 31 provinces. There were reports of people being killed in the streets, videos of security forces opening fire on demonstrators. And then on January 8th, 2026, the Iranian government shut down the internet. Not just censored, shut it down. A near total blackout. 99% of Iran's internet went dark. Phone lines cut in Tehran and other cities. Even Iran's internal network was disconnected, and it stayed down. The government says internet access won't be restored until at least late March, which is the Iranian New Year. Without internet, it's nearly impossible to know the full extent of what's happening, but reports are getting out. Eyewitnesses say security forces are using live ammunition on protesters. Hospitals in Tehran and Shiraz are reportedly overwhelmed with gunshot wounds. One doctor described mass casualty conditions. Some reports say at least 2,000 killed in the first 48 hours of the blackout alone. And the government has announced that protesters will be charged with Maharaba, waging war against God, an offense punishable by death in Iran. So let's rewind for a second, okay? Last summer, 2025, Israel encouraged the United States to strike Iran's nuclear facilities.
And that's nuclear terrorism on a global scale. It threatens everyone. They have plans to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles. Right now, 8,000 kilometers, very soon, just add a little distance, and they can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States. These people who chant death to America, try to assassinate President Trump twice, killed 241 of your Marines in Beirut, killed and injured thousands of American soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq, try to bomb a restaurant in Washington, D.C., chant death to America, burn the American flag. You want these people to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to your cities? Of course not.
Yeah.
So we're defending ourselves, but we're also defending the world.
There was a huge push for war, but MAGA pushed back hard. And Charlie Kirk, who was one of Trump's closest supporters and a trusted advisor, honestly, at that point, posted a poll on X asking whether the US should go to war with Iran. The results were overwhelming. No. Americans didn't want another war in the Middle East. Trump literally campaigned on ending forever wars.
At the end of my next 4 years, the warmongers, and frauds, and failures of the senior ranks of our government will all be gone.
Americans didn't want to send troops
Shalom, shalom. Having a little technical difficulties. Be right back.
Can you hear me?
Shalom, yes, sir.
Yeah, man, they cut my armor power off, bro. let me get a minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 1 minute. Well, yeah, like I said, this is how the devil works. When you get lined out, and Most High start dealing with you, showing you something, you supposed to be expecting something to happen. He's the prince of the power of the air. Okay, but check it out. Let me get this.
Home Depot hates when you do this.
Okay, 1 minute.
You want these people to have nuclear weapons and the
So the name of this video right here is what I was playing is Iran's connection. No one is talking about. So I want you to watch all that. You want to check all that out. I'm gonna play a little more, but evidently it's a problem because I want to go somewhere else. It's bigger than this. Let me play a little more.
means to deliver them to your cities? Of course not.
Yeah.
So we're defending ourselves, but we're also defending the world.
There was a huge push for war, but MAGA pushed back hard. And Charlie Kirk, who was one of Trump's closest supporters and a trusted advisor, honestly, at that point, posted a poll and asking whether the U.S. should go to war with Iran. The results were overwhelming. Land becomes available. So why Patagonia? Why would Israel or Israeli interests want land in southern Argentina? Well, Patagonia has some of the largest freshwater reserves on the planet. Okay. Glacial water, aquifers, lakes, rivers. As climate change accelerates and water becomes the most valuable resource on Earth, Patagonia becomes incredibly strategic. Patagonia also has lithium, rare earth minerals, resources essential for tech and batteries, and has...
So you want to watch that. It's the Iran connection. No one's talking about. Check that out if you want to. But so here where I want to go. Okay, might get shut off again, but here we go. Check this out. I told you about November. What has happened in November? We know about the no high laws, all that, right? Check this out. Okay. So this is the Feast of Tabernacles and how that works. You know, Feast of Tabernacles.
Feast of Trumpets arrives on September 12th, 2026. Jewish communities around the world gather for Rosh Hashanah. The prayers begin. The congregation waits. Everyone knows what is supposed to happen. The shofar should sound. But then something strange happens. No shofar. Not because the shofar disappeared. Not because they forgot. And not because Rosh Hashanah was canceled. There is a very specific reason. September 12th, 2026 falls on Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath. And that creates one of the most fascinating calendar situations of the entire 2026 biblical feast season. The Feast of Trumpets is on September 12th, yet the traditional public shofar ceremony is shifted to September 13th, where the Shabbat restriction is observed. So why? And what does this have to do with the Sabbath? Let's break it down. Welcome back to the channel. If you're watching this because you're following the Feast of Trumpets 2026, Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish calendar, or the biblical significance of the appointed times, this is one date you definitely need to mark. According to the Jewish calendar, Rosh Hashanah begins in the evening of Friday, September 11th, 2026, and the first day falls on Saturday, September 12th. Hebcow identifies September 12th as Rosh Hashanah 1 on Shabbat. And that parenthetical phrase is extremely important because when Rosh Hashanah coincides with Shabbat, traditional Jewish practice introduces a fascinating restriction concerning the shofar. What does the Bible say? First, let's go back to the biblical foundation. Leviticus 23:24 describes the seventh month as a day of solemn rest and says a memorial proclaimed with blast of trumpets. Numbers 29 verse 1 similarly describes the first day of the 7th month as a day when Israel was to gather and present offerings. This is what Christians commonly call the Feast of Trumpets. In Jewish tradition, it became known as Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the Jewish civil year. And one of the most recognizable features associated with Rosh Hashanah is the sounding of the shofar. The shofar is not simply a musical instrument, it is a biblical symbol connected with proclamation, remembrance, repentance, kingship, and the solemnity of God's appointed time. So naturally, you might expect the shofar to be blown on the very first day of Rosh Hashanah, and normally it is, but 2026 is different. The 2026 calendar problem. Here's where things get interesting. In 2026, September 12th is Saturday, and Saturday is Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath. Traditional Jewish law developed a rule concerning the sounding of the shofar when the first day of Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat. The result, the shofar is not publicly sounded on that first day in traditional communities observing this rule. Instead, the shofar is sounded on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Sunday, September 13th, 2026. Think about the unusual sequence. Friday evening, Rosh Hashanah begins. Saturday, September 12th, first day of Rosh Hashanah, but no public shofar blowing in communities following the traditional Shabbat restriction. Sunday, September 13th, second day of Rosh Hashanah, and the shofar is sounded. That's what makes 2026 so fascinating. The date associated with the biblical Feast of Trumpets is September 12th, yet the traditional public shofar ceremony is shifted to September 13th, where the Shabbat restriction is observed. But why? Now, here's the question many people will naturally ask. Why would Jewish tradition prevent the shofar from being blown on Rosh Hashanah itself? The answer goes back to rabbinic interpretation and concerns about the Sabbath. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah 4 verse 1 records the rule that when Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, the shofar was sounded in the temple, but not elsewhere. After the destruction of the temple, the practice became associated with the rabbinic restriction on public shofar blowing when Rosh Hashanah occurs on Shabbat. One concern discussed in Jewish tradition was the possibility that someone unfamiliar with the laws of shofar might carry the instrument to an expert in order to learn how to blow it properly. Carrying an object from one domain to another on Shabbat is itself prohibited under traditional Jewish law. So the rabbis established a protective restriction, and that means something very important. The absence of the shofar on September 12th does not mean the Feast of Trumpets has been forgotten. It is actually the result of another sacred observance taking priority in traditional practice, Shabbat. The strange 2026 twist. And this is where 2026 gives us an incredibly interesting talking point. Imagine someone unfamiliar with the Jewish calendar watching Rosh Hashanah in 2026. They might hear the Feast of Trumpets is September 12th. Then they might watch footage from Israel on September 12th and ask, where are all the shofar blasts? That's a legitimate question, because in many years, the shofar is one of the defining sounds of Rosh Hashanah. But in 2026, the calendar creates an unusual situation. The first day coincides with Shabbat. Therefore, in traditional communities following the restriction, the public shofar blowing moves to the second day. So September 13th becomes the day to watch for the traditional public shofar blasts. This is one reason you should always check the actual Jewish calendar rather than assuming every Feast of Trumpets looks exactly the same every year. And here's what Christians should notice.
Forget buying a brand new car and stop looking down at your phone for directions. You're about to get the smartest, most powerful AI co-pilot in the world right on your dashboard. Engineered by Ivy League PhDs in automotive engineering, along.
Now, if you're a Christian watching this, there is another important distinction. We should not confuse the biblical command concerning the Feast of Trumpets with every later Jewish tradition surrounding its observance. The Bible establishes the appointed time. Jewish tradition developed additional practices and legal rulings concerning how that day is observed. And Christians should be careful not to turn this calendar detail into a prophetic prediction. The fact that the shofar is traditionally not sounded publicly on September 12th does not mean that something prophetic must happen on September 13th, and it certainly does not establish a date for the rapture. Jesus himself warned his followers against setting dates for his return, but that doesn't make the 2026 calendar uninteresting. Quite the opposite. It gives us an opportunity to understand how biblical festivals, Jewish tradition, and the modern Jewish calendar intersect. So let's put the entire thing together. September 12th, 2026, Saturday, is the first day of Rosh Hashanah and coincides with Shabbat. Because of the traditional Jewish restriction concerning shofar blowing on Rosh Hashanah when it falls on Shabbat, communities following that practice do not publicly sound the shofar on that first day. Instead, September 13th, 2026, Sunday, becomes the day when the traditional shofar is sounded. And that creates an incredible 2026 calendar curiosity. The Feast of Trumpets arrives on September 12th, but the traditional public sound of the shofar is heard on September 13th. So if you're watching the Feast of Trumpets this year and wondering, where is the shofar? Now you know. The shofar hasn't been forgotten. The calendar hasn't changed. And Rosh Hashanah hasn't been canceled. It's Shabbat. And that's the fascinating calendar twist that makes the Feast of Trumpets 2026 unlike many other years. If you found this interesting, subscribe, because we're going to keep uncovering the lesser-known details surrounding the biblical feasts, the Jewish calendar, prophecy, and the fascinating events connected with 2026. And here's the question for you. Did you already know that the shofar would not be publicly sounded on the first day of Rosh Hashanah in 2026? Let me know in the comments. Shalom, and I'll see you in the next video.
This song? Okay. So what you think?
Right, so
go ahead.
I would say that's September 11th, you said?
11, 12, and 13.
Right.
Okay, that's September 11th. That should ring a bell in itself. But that's the people you seeing. See the numbers? That's who's gonna be there on the next month. Not us. Okay. Right. And then also a trumpet blast. Right? Let's only go to Ezekiel right quite quick.
Okay.
Check this out. It's crazy, man. So here you go, right here in chapter 37. We always reading this. This is when he's going to resurrect the whole house of Israel, true Israelites, our forefathers, right? It says, "So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I commanded," verse 7, "as I prophesied." See that? As I prophesied, there was a noise. Okay, that's the trumpet. "And behold, a shaking." Okay, that's the earthquake. "And the bones came together, bone to his bone. And when I beheld, lo, the sinew and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them from above, and there was no breath in them. Then said the Lord unto me, Prophesy unto the wind, prophesy, son of man, say unto the wind, Thus says the Lord God, Come from the four winds, O breath, breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath came into them, and they lived and stood upon their feet, an exceedingly great army," right? Then here goes verse 11. "Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say our bones are dried, and our hope is lost, or we are cut off from our parts." So we see right here, when this trumpet blast happens, Israel gonna be identified. Israel gonna be brought, he's gonna raise them up out of their graves. So check this out. Now I'm in Isaiah 66. You can let this ferment. Check it out. It's crazy. I'm in Isaiah 66. Okay, look at this. I'm gonna read the first few verses. Thus says the Lord, the heavens is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where is the house? See that? Where is the house, the temple that ye have built for me? And where is the place of my rest? For all these things have mine hands made, and all these things have been, says the Lord. But to this man will I look, even unto to him that is poor and of a contrite spirit, and tremble at my word. I told you that. That's David. Okay. So this is David gonna get resurrected along with them in Ezekiel 37. He that killeth an ox is as he slew of a man. He that sacrifices a lamb is as if he cut off a dog's neck. He that offereth an oblation as if he offered swine's blood. He that burneth incense as if he blessed an idol. Yea, they have chosen their own ways, and their soul delighteth in their abominations. So I also will choose their delusions. And when their fears come upon them, check it out. And when their fears come upon them, because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear, but they did evil before my eyes and chose that which I delighted not. Now here it is. Check this out. Remember what I said. And next month, it's gonna be all Edomites. That whole land gonna be a wash for Edomites. Okay. He said, hear the words of the Lord, ye that tremble at my word, your brethren, that's these people that's gonna be over there. Okay. And next month, hear the word of the Lord, ye that tremble at my word, your brethren that hated you, that cast you out for my name's sake, said, let the Lord be glorified. That's what we're looking at. Check it out. Let the Lord be glorified. But he shall appear to your joy. That's Ezekiel 37. The whole house of Israel. They shall appear to your joy, and they shall be ashamed. Let that ferment. Okay? Ain't that something?
Right, yes, sir.
Okay. So you see where the deception is at? They playing right into a trap. Okay. So let that, like I said, let that ferment. Listen to it again. Let it ferment. But anyway, with that being said, we're gonna pick a scripture and we're gonna play that. We're gonna read that scripture, then break it down. Then we go into our Q&A. We'll send the link out, and then anybody got any questions on YouTube?
Yes, sir. Shalom, Brother Leonard. Go to Ezekiel 36, sir.
Okay.
This is Ezekiel 36 and 27 through 32, Brother Leonard. And it says, and I will put my spirit within you, and I will cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them, and you shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. I will also save you from all your uncleanness, and I will call for the corn and will increase it and lay no famine upon you. And I will multiply the fruit of the tree and the increase of the field, that you shall receive no more reproach of famine among the heathen. Then shall you remember your own evil ways and your doings that were not good, and shall loathe yourselves in your own sight for your iniquities and for your abominations. Not for your sakes do I do this, saith the Lord God. Let it be it known unto you. Be ashamed and confounded for your own ways, O house of Israel. And shalom. That was Ezekiel chapter 36, verses 27 through 32. Shalom.
Okay. You got
And
any
just
feedback on that?
Shalom, yes, brother Leonard, just in verse 30, sir, where it says, and I will multiply the fruit of the tree and the increase of the field, and you shall receive no more reproach of famine among the heathen. Right? Is he telling us this is before we go back to the land?
Okay, read that again.
And yes, sir, it says, This is 36 and 30, and I will multiply the fruit of the tree, and I'm read 29 too, but Leonard, my bad. And I will also save you from all your uncleannesses, and I will call for the corn and will increase it, and lay no famine upon you. And I will multiply the fruit of the tree and the increase of the field, that you shall receive no more reproach of famine among the heathen.
Yeah, me looking at that, I would say that that's when they came out of Babylon.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So with that being said, you're gonna open it up for some Q&A. Anybody have any questions, comments, and anything they want to talk about? Anything that ring a bell? Something they didn't understand? Anybody got anything?
Oh, shalom. Yes, sir, brother Leonard. You got a few lessons back in the day when you was teaching about how Shem, Ham, and Japhet, right? How they not how all three of them aren't Noah's sons.
Right.
Yes, sir. So I had I got like three questions about that. And in Genesis, right here in Genesis 9, brother Leonard, it say okay, now no live 50, 150 years. Okay, 9 and 24, and it says in Shem and Japhet took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And and Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. My bad, it's the wrong verse, brother. But I was just looking for a verse where it says just Shem, Ham, and Japhet. Or
You gotta go up to the beginning of that chapter.
Okay, well, okay, this I think I'm asking in the wrong order, but so brother Leonard, when it says like in the birth order, how you was showing, right? Anytime we read a birth order and somebody got three sons like Shem, Ham, and Japhet, then it would say
Right.
That would mean Shem is the oldest, then so on, right? And then
Right.
yes, sir. So I was reading in 9:24, and it says, and Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him.
Right.
And so they always say in the Bible, Shem, Ham, and Japhet. It mentions one time that Japhet is the elder, but most
Yeah.
times. Oh, go ahead, brother Leonard. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's the power of the be trying to offset that.
Okay,
Because,
right.
because the order is when they listening from elder to younger, but they trying to these so-called people that's hooked with the scriptures, they trying to offset that.
Mm-hmm.
They making sure they tell you that J-Fat is not the younger, because they don't want you to see that J-Fat is the one that violated Noah.
Right. Yes, sir. Seen his nakedness. And then
We,
so brother Leonard too, you always talk about how Canaan didn't get on the boat, right?
right.
So when whoever seen Noah's nakedness, there was a child that came from it.
Right.
Right, yes, sir. So when it says what Noah seen what his younger son done to him, and then you got Shem, Ham, and Japhet. Then Japhet did it, and that would mean Japhet is the father of Canaan.
Exactly. Right. Right, and we got an example of that. What happened with Reuben? Reuben saw. It says Reuben saw. Trying to think of her name.
Bill High or
Yeah, he saw her nakedness.
yes, sir.
But what did Reuben do?
Oh yeah, he went into it.
He went into it. So that's what happened right here. Noah saw what his younger son had done unto him. He saw his nakedness, means that he laid with his wife. He laid with Noah's wife. And that's how you get. Then it says, and he cursed Canaan, because Canaan was the product of them laying together. She conceived, and he cursed Canaan. So it's not Ham's son. He ain't in Ham's lineage. And these things that like I said, we at the very end. You gotta undo that. You gotta unask it, or you can stay in the dark. But it's not. He's not Ham's son. He's your fat son. Right. It's one of the lies they done did. They done hoodwinked us. Because all we gotta do is look at what happened. We can look at what happened with when Alexander came on the scene, and then he died, and then Alexander ruled for 12 years. Then he turned his kingdom over to his 4 generals, and in the book of Maccabees tell you, and they did much evil on earth. That's Japhet lineage.
Right.
Not Ham lineage. Okay? Yeah.
Come on. And so too, Brother Leonard, another question about it. If you know how I say in Genesis that Joseph was a Pharaoh. That Joseph was a father to Pharaoh. He said the Lord of hosts made him a father to Pharaoh.
Right.
So is that what they're meaning too? Where it says that Noah's, I know that Shem is his son. When they're saying he a father to Japhet and Ham, do they just mean it how they meant with Joseph and Pharaoh?
Well, it's the knowledge. When you understand the 10 men before the flood, Adam, then Canaan, and all them, that's the order of Melchizedek. That's the knowledge so any other man that come across them men because of where the Most High had them at, they their father, because of the knowledge they possess. So what the knowledge that Joseph got from his father when he went into Egypt, he became the Pharaoh father because he lined the Pharaoh out. Pharaoh not dealing with the knowledge and the wisdom from heaven. But by Joseph being there, Joseph lining him out, he became Pharaoh father. Like I said, a lot of people look over it. I keep shining the light on it. As soon as he brought Jacob, he went and got all his people, his family, brought them to Egypt, and then he introduced the Pharaoh to his dad, to Jacob, right?
Right.
What's the first thing Jacob did?
Oh yeah, he blessed him, didn't he?
Laid hands on him.
Right.
Because Jacob and his lineage came from Adam, are the custodians of the earth.
Right.
So the first thing he did was he laid hands on the Pharaoh and blessed him. Because he's in that position. Same way Joseph in that position. Like I said, the Pharaoh had a dream, the Most High sent the angel, gave him a dream. Well, who interpreted it?
Right, Joseph.
Who greater?
Right. Joseph.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Well, he became his father. The same way he told Moses, Aaron coming, and you're gonna become a god to Aaron, because of the knowledge that Moses is dealing with the Lord of hosts.
Right.
Okay, the same way with that.
Okay.
Not only did he become a father to Pharaoh, but he became a father to the whole land of Egypt. because the knowledge of the Most High wasn't there. Joseph brought it there. With his presence.
True. Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir. I like that because the Pharaoh said, "I ain't heard of your God."
Right. He ain't never heard of him because he ain't know nothing about it. He know nothing about their stop laws, their statutes, and he tell them that. What nation in the earth have that got such laws like yours? Okay. Is that something?
Right, sir.
Okay.
And then, Brother Leonard, my last question, sir, is about that replenish in Genesis 1, replenish the earth.
126.
Right, yes, sir.
Right. It was a civilization, and it was before Genesis 1. Before Genesis 1 and 1, when we come to Genesis 1 and 1, it's a flood. Well, we know what happened with the last flood. The earth got contaminated when those 200 angels came down, and then the Most High had eventually bring a flood. Well, before that, Lucifer contaminated not only the earth, he contaminated the whole universe. And so the Most High had to shut the whole thing down. And what we're looking at in Genesis 1 and 1, he and the Lord of hosts, Michael, is returning back to the earth. That's why he said the whole earth is covered with water. He did it before. And then you say, what are you talking about? Well, that's why he said, never again am I going to cover the earth with water again. The next time it's going to be with fire. He's saying that because he had did it before. When we come to what happened with Noah's flood was the second time. And he says, I'm never going to do that again. Okay?
So, yes, sir. So they're leaving out even more than, than we thought and knew from these books, even the hidden books, because that that knowledge ain't in there. Not really.
No. Right. And all we have to do is look at it. I mean, do the Most High create anything? When he's doing creating and making and forming things, do we ever create anything with like I said, boo, chaos? Or is it good?
It's good.
So look at the planets. Something happened.
Like the Sahara.
Right. Something happened. Okay. And so when we come to Genesis 1 and 1, he's returning to the earth. He didn't return to the whole solar system. He returned to the earth and brought light on the earth. With the Mars and all them places, they still what he done to it.
Right.
Okay.
And then was those angels on those other planets, Brother Lynn?
Right. Satan controlled the whole solar system. He was dealing with all that. And then because of what he done, Most High he contaminated it. Just like the 200 angels contaminated when they came to earth. And like I was saying before, that's what I believe happened when it comes to the fact that why the earth got a tilt in it. Like I said, they didn't understand the power that the Lord of hosts had. Not Yahweh, but he had. And so when he shut it down, what he did, he threw the earth off. It's got a wobble in it. And that's why until this day, now they know what he capable of. That's why he get the respect he get now. It's like going to a basketball court you ain't never really been to before. You go out to the park and all the guys at the court don't know you. You're a beast on the court, but they don't know it. So they don't give you no respect. But once you go to work on them, then you get then they see, oh, this dude there, he ain't no joke. He ain't to be played with.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So, dang, that makes a lot more sense now. It's even another movie. I might pop that on now. That I can't even remember the name of it, but it had Channing Tatum in it, and that's what they were doing, Brother Leonard. Like all those other planets. Well, not
Mm-hmm.
all of them had the reptilians on it. It was only one, where they was like running everything. You know, they was the ones in charge, but there were other celestial beings that were on the other planets that all reported to the reptilian looking beings.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds just like what you described.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Like I said, the reason why we don't see these cities that they talk about, Atlantis and Lemuria, we don't see them no more because those are the planets. Those cities that was on the earth was where the 200 angels was at.
Mm.
They supernatural, highly intelligent beings that couldn't ascend no more. So where they was at, they had all this knowledge. So that's how you got those cities like that. But eventually, like I said, through UFOs and all that, they found a way back into the space. So those cities, you don't see those cities no more. Those cities got abandoned because they left. They found that they supernatural beings. They figured out how to get back in the sky. They couldn't they no longer could they ascend like they normally did and use the portals and all that with the abilities the Lord of hosts gave them, Yahweh gave them. So they because they supernatural, the super intelligent beings, they used the earth and its resources and found out how and figured a way how to get back into the heavens. That's just me.
Now that makes sense too, brother Leonard. That's what they show in a lot
Right,
of the shows and the movies for them going into the different dimensions, and then they
right,
always talking about that their homeland was destroyed in a lot of the
right.
movies.
Exactly.
They always saying that.
Right. They can't go back to the heavens of heavens and all that, but they back up in they back in space
Right. Mm-hmm.
because of their intelligence. All the stuff we see with the pyramids and all that, that's when they was bound here. They couldn't and trying to figure out a way how to be able to get from off this planet, back into the heavens, back into this our space. And eventually, because of who they are, they figured out how to do it. And that's where these UFOs and these crafts coming from. Oh yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's so.
And that show too that they're a higher being because they didn't want to stay here. They
Right,
they strove to get back to partially where they from.
right. And
People
that's
think,
so.
yes sir, people think uh well, I guess you hear it amongst like Gentiles, but having a conversation or not whether humans are on earth alone, in the universe and stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, and like I said before, when you start looking at like this video I just played with Iran connection, no one's talking about. You can see what's getting ready to happen. It's right around the corner. So like I said before, when you understand who these people are, who these are, they're not the real Jews, they're not the real Israelites, but they're going to come out in mass for next month. So the whole land of Israel, so-called Israel, is going to be awash with them. They're going to keep the Shabbat. I mean, keep the Feast of Tabernacles and all that. It's something big getting ready to go down. It ain't like any other Feast of Trumpets they've been having because we can see how they intensified everything with the the man said they got all they got the red heifers. They already had a red heifer ceremony. They all got all the stuff, all the furniture. They got all that. They got all the so-called Levitical priesthood. All that's lined up. There's something big getting ready to go down 2026. All we gonna sit back and watch. Like I said, y'all hell finna break loose. Because when you look at it, where they at right now, if they don't finish the job after all they've done and prepared to where they at today, ain't no, this is it. This is their opportunity. Right here. Only thing, and it's got to be before either they're gonna do something horrendous to get past the midterms, or they're gonna do it before the midterm. Like the lady said, they got some kind of super technology from what they done with Moderna. How they captured him. They got some kind of super technology that they ain't brought out yet on the radar. They're gonna be forced to use it to try to bring about these fake ass prophecies. Okay.
All right, sir.
Yeah. So you good?
Good, sir.
Okay. So we don't have nothing else. I'm gonna say shalom to everybody. Well, we got our Shabbat classes tomorrow. We got our morning Shabbat from 10 to 12 a.m. And then we close the Shabbat out tomorrow evening at 6 to 7. Normally it's about an hour, but it might go over. But so with that being said, I'm gonna say shalom to everybody, and I'll see y'all tomorrow for the Shabbat. Shalom, shalom, and another shalom.
Shalom, Hebrews.
I highly recommend that you get this book and you read it, because it's a must that you understand who God head is in the order that's in the Old Testament and Tanakh, because it's not the same as in the New Testament. And when you read this and you get an understanding, then the scriptures open up, and then you begin to understand. So I highly recommend that you get this book. It's the Elohim of Israel. And there's a breakdown on the word Elohim and who the God of Israel is and the Godhead.